Hello and welcome. My name is Jessica Barrow, and I am the Assistant Director of Call Center Services at Integrated Family Services. Later on in this video, you will be introduced to my colleague, Keith Ham, who is our Community Liaison. But for now, let me explain why you're watching this video. As you are aware, we are in the month of September. Boy, does time fly. Does anyone happen to know what is significant about this month? Well, if you guessed it being Suicide Awareness Month, then you guessed correct, and good job. So yes, September is Suicide Awareness Month, and September 10th happens to be Suicide Awareness Day. The colors of suicide awareness are purple and teal. So if you have any of these colors in your closet at home, help us spread awareness by wearing these colors throughout the remainder of this month. You can also bring awareness by displaying a yellow ribbon. In partnership with your school district, Integrated Family Services was asked to do a video focusing on suicide prevention and awareness, and to provide you all with some very important information on suicide. We will also talk about what you can do to offer a helping hand to someone who may be struggling with suicidal thoughts, and give you some resources that are available right here in your very own community. So, with that being said, let's get started. Suicide prevention starts with recognizing the warning signs and taking them seriously. If you think a friend or family member is considering suicide, there's plenty you can do to help save a life. But what is suicide? What does being suicidal mean? Suicide is the act of intentionally taking your own life and is a tragic reaction to stressful life events. Suicide is a desperate attempt to escape suffering that has become unbearable. Blinded by feelings of self-loathing, hopelessness, and isolation, a suicidal person cannot see any way of finding relief except through death. But despite their desire for the pain to stop, most people who are suicidal are deeply conflicted about ending their own lives. They wish there was an alternative to suicide, but they just can't see one. Suicide affects people of all ages, race, and backgrounds. Later on, I will talk about the behaviors that someone who is thinking about suicide may have. We call these warning signs. But for now, let's review some statistics and bust a few myths that many people have about suicide. Are you ready? Statistic number 1. According to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. But you know what? It is the 2nd leading cause of death among people between the ages of 10 and 34. Majority of you that are watching this video are within this age range, and if you're not 10 yet, you will be soon. Statistic number 2. Suicide claims the lives of approximately 47,000 people a year. That is a lot of people. Too many people. Just these numbers are a huge reason why suicide awareness is so important. Talk about suicide. Ask about suicide. Bringing awareness to suicide can 100% save a life. Ready to bust a few myths? Let's do it. But first, what is a myth? A myth is a false belief or idea, which basically means it's not true. A fact, on the other hand, is something that is known to be proven or true. When talking about suicide, we want to make sure that we are sharing information that is correct. So that's why I'm taking the time today to educate you about some of the myths that are out there about suicide and providing you with the facts. Myth number 1, talking about suicide or asking someone if they are suicidal will make them become suicidal. No. In fact, you don't give someone suicidal ideas by talking about suicide. Rather, the opposite is true. Talking openly and honestly about suicidal thoughts and feelings can help save a life. Myth number 2. People who talk about suicide won't really do it. No. In fact, almost everyone who attempts suicide has given some clue or warning. Don't ignore even the indirect references to death or suicide. Statements like, "You'll be sorry when I'm gone," or "I can't see any way out," no matter how casually or jokingly said, they may indicate serious suicidal feelings. Myth number 3. A young person who attempts suicide will always be suicidal. No. In fact, most people who are at risk feel suicidal for only a brief period in their lives. With proper assistance and support, they may never be suicidal again. Myth number 4. If I think about suicide, that means I will die by suicide. No. In fact, the vast majority of people who think about suicide do not attempt suicide or die by suicide. And last one, myth number 5. People that die by suicide are weak. No. In fact, people who die by suicide are very strong. They just may be dealing with untreated depression or another mental illness. Earlier, I mentioned behaviors that someone may have when they are thinking of suicide. Remember, I said we call these warning signs? Okay, so let's talk about that now. But what is a warning sign? What does that even mean? A warning sign in mental health are behaviors or symptoms that a person may display that should be concerning to others around them that something is wrong. We will go further in depth about what the warning signs of suicide are here in a moment, but first, knowing and being able to identify the warning signs of suicide are extremely important. Why? Because the best way to prevent suicide is to recognize these warning signs and know how to respond if you spot them. If you believe that a friend or family member is suicidal, you can play a role in suicide prevention by pointing out the alternatives, showing that you care, and getting help involved. In other words, you could save a life. As we go through the warning signs, you may start to think about past times that you have seen someone display these types of behaviors. Again, if you see someone with these warning signs, it is important for you to ask them if they are suicidal. Do not just assume that they are or that they are not. My colleague, Keith, will talk further about this in his portion. So for now, let's focus on the warning signs. The warning signs of suicide are below. Number 1, talking about suicide. Any talk about suicide, dying, self-harm, making statements like, "I wish I hadn't been born," "If I see you again," "I'd rather be better off dead." These are all statements that people who are considering suicide may make. Number 2, seeking out lethal means. This means seeking access to guns, pills, knives, or other objects that could be used in a suicide attempt. Number 3, preoccupation with death. This means unusually focusing on death, dying, or violence. Maybe they are writing poems or stories about death. Maybe they're writing a suicide note. Number 4, having no hope for the future. This means those feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, that feeling of being trapped, as in there's no way out. The belief that things will never get better or things will never change. Number 5, self-loathing or self-hatred. This is when people may feel worthless. They have a lot of guilt. They have a lot of shame. They hate themselves. Oftentimes they feel like a burden on those around them, and in their minds, everyone would be better off without them, which is not true. Number 6, getting affairs in order. So maybe this is like for individuals who decide to make a will that they didn't have. They begin to give away their prized possessions, things that they would never give away if they were not thinking of suicide. Making arrangements for their family members. Maybe they have children, maybe they have siblings, and they're starting to make arrangements for those family members that they're planning that they're going to leave. Number 7, saying goodbye. Unusual or unexpected visits or calls to family and friends. Saying goodbye to people like they won't be seen again. Number 8, withdrawing from others. This is when you withdraw from your friends and family, those people that you always love to be around, those people that you spend all of your time with, and you all of a sudden are withdrawn. You become isolated, so you have mainly the desire to be left alone. If someone who is a people person and loves to be around others suddenly just wants to be left alone all the time, that's a huge warning sign that something is wrong. Number 9, self-destructive behavior. This could include things like an increase in alcohol or drug use, reckless driving, and engaging in unsafe behavior. So anything that puts that individual at risk of death. And taking unnecessary risk, as in doing things as if they have a death wish. And last but not least, number 10, a sudden sense of being calm. So let's say that you have experienced someone close to you has been extremely depressed, and then all of a sudden they're calm and they're happy. It could be that that person has made a decision to die by suicide. So you should definitely be concerned. All of these are warning signs of suicide. The first step of suicide prevention is to speak up if you're worried. If you spot the warning signs of suicide in someone you care about, you may wonder if it's a good idea to say anything. What if you're wrong? What if the person gets angry? In such situations, it's natural to feel uncomfortable or afraid, but anyone who talks about suicide or shows other warning signs needs immediate help. The sooner, the better. Talking to a friend or family member about their suicidal thoughts and feelings can be extremely difficult for anyone. But if you're unsure whether someone is suicidal, the best way to find out is to ask. You cannot make a person suicidal by showing that you care. In fact, giving a suicidal person the opportunity to express his or her feelings can provide relief from loneliness and pent-up negative feelings, and it may prevent them from attempting suicide. My colleague Keith will now talk more to you about how you could talk to someone about suicide and some helpful questions to ask. But before I go, I want to leave you with this. If you or someone that you know is experiencing suicidal thoughts, please reach out for help. You can save a life.
Hi, my name is Keith Ham, and my coworker Jessica introduced me to you when she began her portion of this video. I wanted to let you know that I'm the father of 2 teenage daughters, and I'm very much aware of the struggles that young people can have. Additionally, as a mobile crisis professional, I've responded to dozens of students who were experiencing thoughts of suicide. I've sat and listened to their stories. I've heard their problems, and I've seen the look of pain on their faces. And I do understand that sometimes it's difficult to be a young person, especially in our world today. But I want to say this to you. I want to tell you that no matter what you're facing in life, no matter what the problem or problems that you have, suicide is never, ever the answer. Suicide is what I call a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Oftentimes I'm asked to speak to groups of students, and at some point in that presentation, I'll take out my iPhone and I'll say, I don't have any service right now. Maybe it's because of the block building in the school or whatever it is, or maybe Verizon has lost a tower. So since I don't have any service on my cell phone, I think I'll just take it outside and find me a big rock and smash it to bits. Every student looks horrified, like, why would you do something? Why would you do that? You're going to get service again. That's exactly right. That would be a permanent solution to a temporary problem. It is the same with suicide. Whatever problems a person is facing may not be their problems tomorrow or next week or next month or even next year. So suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. I'd like to talk with you for just a few moments, as Jessica promised, about how you can talk to friends who may be experiencing thoughts of suicide. First, I'd like to share some ways that you can start the conversation. You can begin by saying, and I realize that it may be face-to-face, it may be on the phone, or it may be through text or social media, but you can begin by saying, I've been feeling concerned about you lately, or I've been worried about you lately. That is a tremendous statement, and here's why. People who have attempted suicide and thankfully were not able to complete it, most of them say that had anyone shown any concern for them that day prior to the attempt, they probably would not have attempted suicide if someone had shown some caring or some concern. So just starting off that conversation by letting them know you're concerned. I've been worried about you. I've been concerned about you lately. You could say something like, recently I've noticed some differences in you. I wondered how you're doing. Or, I wanted to check in with you because you haven't seemed yourself lately. Anything that you can do to start a conversation about how another person is feeling is a helpful start. In whatever way you say that, be sure and start the conversation. The only way you're going to be able to help someone is if you know whether or not there's truly something going on. And another tip is, if you ask the question or you start the conversation and say, I've been feeling concerned about you lately, and they say, no, I'm fine. You can probably tell by their tone or their quickness to answer that maybe there really is something going on. So move on to another statement like, well, I've noticed some differences in you and I wondered how you're doing. It might just open up if you probe just a little bit more. Some questions that you can ask once they open up. When did you begin feeling this way? Or did something happen to make you start feeling this way? Or how can I be a support to you right now? Have you thought about getting help? These are good questions to follow up once someone opens up to you and tells you that they have been struggling or they have been feeling hopeless or overwhelmed by their problems. Just follow up with some questions. Here are some things that you can say that would be extremely helpful for the individual. You're not alone in this. I'm here for you. You may not believe it now, but the way you're feeling can change. Don't pretend that you can fix all of their problems because you can't. I may not be able to understand exactly how you feel, you could say, but I care about you and I want to help. And then when it comes down to it, at some point, you need to ask the question. You need to ask, are you feeling suicidal? Are you having thoughts of killing yourself? Don't ask a person if they're thinking about hurting themselves, because that's a whole different subject. Ask them if they're having thoughts of suicide or if they've been considering killing themselves. As Jessica already stated, asking a person who is not suicidal about suicide is not going to make them suicidal. So go ahead, ask the question. It's very important. And if a person has been thinking about suicide or having thoughts of killing themselves, don't let it go. Don't leave it alone. Don't leave them alone. You need to, number one, tell someone. That's right. You need to tell someone, a teacher, a guidance counselor, a principal, a parent, a responsible adult. You have to tell someone. I know what you're thinking. I'm going to betray their confidence. I'm going to be a tattle. No, you're not. You're saving a life. I mentioned to you earlier that I've responded to dozens of teens who were experiencing thoughts of suicide. Most of those, the way that I found out about it, was that a friend told a responsible adult, and we were able to get involved. Because of that, their life was saved in many cases. And you know what? Of all those people who had a friend who tattled, none of them were angry with the friend. They felt more close to the friend, and they were very appreciative. So number one, tell someone. You've also been given some resources along with this video. Things like Crisis Chat, Integrated Family Services. If you go to our website at integratedfamilyservices.net, you can click on a banner at the top right-hand corner that says Chat with Us, and you can anonymously chat and share whatever problems that you're experiencing and get some help from a qualified professional. We also have mobile crisis services where somebody like me or Jessica can come out and talk with you. Suggest that your parent or guardian or the school counselor call mobile crisis. You've also been given a number for the National Suicide Hotline for anyone who may be experiencing suicidal thoughts. And then finally, you can text 741-741. And again, a qualified person will begin to text back and forth with you to see what's going on and how they can help. Thank you for taking a few moments to watch this video.